Last year, there was a visionary entrepreneur, Kevin Systrom, who on this stage explained how he was building Instagram into a major company and that he would never sell. Almost. Kevin will be upset at me. But I think he said that. We have that on video somewhere. And he passed 100 million users, registered users. Very recently, he sold the company for $1 billion to Facebook. And he's going to explain us what's coming next, why he's done that with MG Siegler, who is a partner at CrunchFund. Kevin, MG. Thank you for coming back, both of you.
Thank you, Louis.
MG, good to see you.
Thanks.
Kevin, you're like so used to Paris, now you could live here.
Nice couches this year.
It is nice. Hello.
Hello, Kevin.
Hello.
It's the first time I get to use this in an interview process. Have you played with this thing
I
yet?
have not seen one of those before.
Really?
Yes.
That doesn't bode well for Instagram for iPad being announced now? No?
No. We're not going to talk about that. This is actually the first time that MG and I have talked on stage. MG was the person who called me 3 years ago when he discovered a link to a service I was working on that became Instagram. And this is the first time we've talked on stage.
Now he's just trying to butter me up, so I won't ask the hard questions. But I'm happy to talk about me the entire half an hour. The conference gods have smiled upon us because there is actually something to talk about that's breaking right now. And we'll just dive right into that first. I had pages and pages of notes, and then, of course, all that goes out the window to be able to talk about something. So apparently, you guys just shut off Twitter card access. And for those who don't know, that's basically Twitter has, on their website and on their mobile apps right now, they have cards that are able to show certain types of data. And for Instagram, they had been showing images. The full Instagram image would come in, and you could click on a tweet, and you could see the image come down in the feed. That's no longer the case as of like an hour ago or something like that. So what's going on there?
I think this is an evolution of just where we are with where we want links to our content to go. And to be fair, when we first integrated with Twitter, by the way, we will always be integrated with Twitter in the way that you can tweet out a photo from Instagram to Twitter. When we first did that, it was just a link. And over time, we realized that there was a need to be able to see that photo. And when Twitter added cards, we had a very minimal web presence.
And you were one of the first to implement that, right?
We were one of the first to implement it. And I think it was only about 9 months ago or so. So actually well into our history, we started using Twitter cards. And what we realized over time was that we really needed to build an awesome web presence. And just recently, we launched web profiles, which allows you to showcase all of your images from the past.
Right.
And we also revamped all of our web properties. Now that we're at Facebook, we actually were able to staff up teams to work on our web properties. And now you can like, you can comment, you can hashtag, et cetera, from the mobile website. And because of that, we wanted to make sure to direct users to where the content lives originally to make sure that users on Instagram get the full experience of Instagram.
So right now, I know people are probably out there kind of looking at the implementation. We were looking at it a little bit earlier. It looks like partial pictures come in right now. They're sort of cropped weirdly, but those are going to go away entirely, and you want people clicking through that link to come to Instagram itself to be able to see the full picture and be able to comment and like, et cetera.
That's correct. I think this is really confusing, and I apologize because I think not many people know what Twitter cards are. It's a hard concept to understand. Really, it's just about where do you go to consume that image? Where do you go to interact with that image? And we want that to be on Instagram.com because we think it's a better user experience currently.
Right, and of course, I mean, this speaks to a larger question here. I think there's already, Nick Bilton is already calling it the photo wars situation, but it's broader than that, right? It's really about all the different social players, and you guys were acquired by what is, considered the dominant social player, and Twitter is, maybe the second dominant social player, depending on what numbers you're looking at. And so when Facebook acquired you guys, they went out of their way to say that nothing would change in terms of integrations with the other social networks, since that was so key to your guys' existence. And obviously, something is changing now. Was that them? Was that you? Like, who makes that decision?
I actually think the original quote by Mark was that we're going to maintain sharing to Twitter, and that still is true today. I think that obviously things change as a company evolves, and I don't think we ever said nothing would change. We're always going to be improving the experience for our users, and we're always going to be making sure that we evolve where we are. I think that this decision is definitely coming from me in that I want to make sure that our users have the best possible experience. This is not a case of Facebook and Instagram, or Facebook putting some sort of policy on Instagram. And this isn't actually a consequence of us getting acquired. This is very much a consequence of it being the correct thing to do for our business at this time. So
this isn't retribution for Twitter shutting off their follow graph, which they did that a few months ago to you guys, right? So they had a way that within you guys had a way within Instagram that you could hook up to Twitter, and you would be able to see all of your Twitter friends who were also on Instagram, and they shut that off 2 months ago.
That's correct.
And so this seems like tit for tat, but you're saying it's not that.
The press kind of has a history of painting things that way, and we have a really good relationship with Twitter. In fact, Twitter's founder, Jack, was one of our first investors.
Right.
And we've always had a really good relationship with them. I think that...
though he no longer uses Instagram.
And that's okay. I mean, I have family members that don't use Instagram, so it's okay. I think that what we're trying to do is figure out what's best for our users going forward, and it's an evolving conversation. And I won't say it's a perfect solution right now. I think we're going to have to figure out how to evolve the conversation going forward. And it's definitely not retribution for anything like that.
Are you suggesting your grandmother maybe tried to acquire Instagram and then she got rebuffed, and that's why she no longer uses Instagram?
That's not. No.
Okay, not to belabor this point, because we do have other things to talk about, but just so we're clear, there are other networks that you're sharing out to. For example, I always post my Instagrams to my Tumblr blog. Mm-hmm. Is that going to change at all? Is that going to remain intact? How do you view that?
We get a lot of traffic from Tumblr, and I would also say that the large majority of our photos are actually shared to Facebook and to Twitter. So this is more of a one-off, trying to figure out, specifically with our Twitter integration, what it should look like. And we've just decided that right now what makes sense is to direct users to our new mobile experience.
So it sounds like then you're open to kind of negotiating and figuring out a way to maybe change it a little bit more, maybe beyond just being a link back there?
I think Twitter and Instagram both want that. I think we both want the best user experience. And I think both of us agree that our current implementation, with or without cards, is not the correct one for users. And I think it's merely maybe a difference of where you start. And I think where we're starting right now is without cards.
Okay, so that's always a fun thing to, some late breaking news to talk about. It's been about 3 months now since you've actually, since the deal's been closed, right?
That's correct.
So you've been there, almost a full quarter. How is everything going actually at Facebook?
It's actually going really, really well. And I think, initially when the acquisition was announced, I think a lot of Instagram users had an angst of not exactly knowing what was going to happen. Was the product going to continue? Could you still, have the same filters? Would that change? Would all of a sudden things start showing up in the Facebook app? I think what we've tried to do, and I think we've done really well here, is keep the pace of innovation up and keep the pace of releases up. We've grown our team from 16 at the time of acquisition to now over 25, which, by end of year will likely have doubled our team.
Are those people who come over from Facebook, or are they still outside people that you're hiring?
It's a mix. Right now, the large majority are coming over from Facebook. And when I say coming over, I mean moving desks from one side of the room to our side of the room.
Right, because you are based down there now.
We are based down there.
The entire team moved down to the new headquarters.
And Instagram is very much part of Facebook. And I'm loving the fact that we can move the way we can move now. We've been able to staff up our Android team. We've been able to staff up our web team. We've been able to launch web profiles because of things like this. There's nothing but moving faster that has come of the last 3 months. And I think that is what every startup wants, whether you're independent or within a larger company.
So that's a very nice answer to give, but how's it really
Do
going?
I look happy? I think I'm happy.
Is it really going as well as you portrayed to be? It just seems like this is such a different scenario, right? You were notorious for having a very small team and keeping things, as lean as possible. And now you work at a behemoth of a company, and so
Behemoth is relative.
Behemoth is relative.
A couple thousand people is not a behemoth.
Okay,
And
a behemoth of a smaller social company.
I think there are always challenges.
That's now public.
I worked in mergers and acquisitions at Google for the last year that I was there. I don't remember exactly which year, but I worked and I saw different types of acquisitions go through, and I saw things go really well, and I heard stories of when things didn't go really well. And I actually think that experience really helped our team go down to Facebook. And in fact, the guy, Amin is his name, who worked on this deal from the corporate development side, was basically my boss on the corporate development team at Google. So I was able to work really closely with him about an integration plan that would mean that Instagram would continue to thrive, and we'd really make sure not to disrupt things. And I honestly do feel that it's going very, very well. And I think that surprises people, because people assume acquisitions to have an effect on the company where everyone leaves and all of a sudden they don't work on anything anymore. And if anything, the opposite's happening right now.
No one's left, right?
That's correct.
And so how autonomous are you within Facebook? How much say do they have over the product right now? Are you guys in your own little wing of the Facebook headquarters?
We're hidden away somewhere. No, it's very integrated. And when you say how much say do you have, let me paint a picture like this. Imagine you're a startup and you have a board. That board has say in what you do as well, and that board is actually, in the best case scenario, a source of value for you as an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of our relationship with people like Cheryl and Mark and Shrep, these people are fantastically good at what they do, and it's awesome to have them as leadership at Facebook because they're able to help us grow our company. They've seen it all before. They've done it all before. And I think that helps a team of 16 go even faster. When we announced the acquisition, there were 27-ish million users registered on Instagram. And by the time the acquisition went through, there were 100 million. And that type of acceleration of speed and growth is something you need really smart people in the room to help with. And it really helps that Facebook has seen this before, especially on the infrastructure side.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Facebook's still not really doing anything beyond what they were doing before to promote you guys in terms of that. Is that right? Or are they showing more Instagram pictures now, or is it just still the accelerated growth from just how well you guys have been doing?
Yeah, I don't understand exactly the news feed algorithms and people, I think.
If you don't, then I think we're all screwed on understanding that.
People, I think we understand a lot more of what goes on inside of Facebook, and we've only been there a couple months. It's actually been not that much time, and right now we're trying to figure out the best way to accelerate Instagram's growth. And obviously, going forward, we're going to find ways of leveraging the fact that Facebook has 1 billion people using it every month.
Right.
And Instagram wants to have 1 billion. So how do we get there? There are more mobile phones, people with mobile phones than people with computers. And I think that in the long run, what we'll end up seeing is more smartphones. People will be able to use Instagram to share their daily life. And I think that's really important to remember, that we're at a scale now that we have the ability to be a 1 billion person company. And that's going to take a lot of expertise and infrastructure, all of which we get by being at Facebook much more quickly.
Hopefully you mean 1 billion users and not 1 billion people working at it.
Right. No, it would be a very large company.
Speaking of kind of that growth, how has the Android stuff been going? Because obviously that was the new thing that you launched before the acquisition, and it seems like that was one of the low-hanging fruits for you guys to take advantage of to really kind of accelerate growth. Has that gone as you expected, better, worse?
It's gone amazingly well. You launch on Android, and within, I think the first day we had 1.5 million signups on that one day for Instagram, for Android. And we've seen growth continue to be very, very strong there. I think that, being on iOS and being on Android, those two platforms are the most important right now because they're the largest in terms of distribution. But I think what's going to be interesting is watching the platforms evolve and seeing where that balance shifts. And I'm not sure if it's going to be iOS in the long run or Android or whether we end up with two, but I'm glad that they both exist. I'm glad that we're able to be on both of them so that we can serve way more people.
And obviously Facebook has a history with photos itself. It was a key part of their growth early on.
Absolutely.
People tagging, et cetera. And now they're heavily focused on mobile, and they have still their own photo features. You know, they have that new thing now where you can upload in the background or whatnot. And they came out with a camera product right after the acquisition was announced, right? I don't think they've done much with that. I don't think it still is even optimized for iPhone 5. I don't know. Did you kill that team?
I don't know.
But how much will Instagram always exist as the standalone product? I think you've more or less said that it would, but do you ever envision it being just a part of a Facebook application itself?
I'll tell you what the current plan is. The current plan is that Instagram exists outside of the Facebook application for a very good reason. In the same way that the Messenger app exists outside. Quick access, ease of use. And for us, we have a different graph.
Right.
Your friends on Facebook are not necessarily the people you follow on Instagram. But if you drew a Venn diagram, there's actually an overlap of value there. And I think what we want to do is figure out where that sweet spot is in the overlap and figure out what types of things we can do together as not two independent companies anymore, but instead two companies that come together with deep, tight integrations. And we've been able to do tons of stuff with Open Graph because of this. We've been able to send likes over. So now you can see when your friends like photos.
Right.
We optimize the experience for mobile so that we get a lot of traffic, right? I think all of these things together show a independent path for the Instagram brand and product, much in the way I think people think of YouTube. YouTube continued to be an independent product and brand. At the same time, they were able to leverage the resources of Google by hiring people inside of Google and outside of Google and leveraging the infrastructure that Google had already put in place.
Do you view it then as Instagram, will it be able to exist, let's say, I know it's very early on and you've got plenty of earnout, I'm sure, left to earn, and you're not going to leave Facebook anytime soon. Correct me if I'm wrong. But will Instagram be able to live on without you and Mike around?
I think the best piece of advice I ever got from an entrepreneur was, it actually wasn't from an entrepreneur, it was from a book. It talks about building organizations in trying to build them up so that they can exist without you. And that's not necessarily the end goal in mind. It's not like, oh, I don't want to be here. It's more that, Steve Jobs passed away, but his legacy lives on through Apple, through its values, through its design, through its manufacturing process, through its style. Right. And I think what you want to do as a leader, whether you're planning on being there for many years like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, or you're planning on being there a couple of years because of an earnout or something, you want to make sure that you build a company up, an organization up, to outlive whatever small bumps in the road it may see in the future. But for me, I actually love that I'm working on the product that touches so many people, and I want to be able to, when I'm 60, look back and say, we worked on that. And we made that as big as it could possibly be. And it is by far the biggest opportunity for me right now as an individual, and that's why I work at Instagram, because I actually feel like we're changing the world.
And that leads to something that I've been thinking about quite a bit recently. So I talked to a not insignificant number of entrepreneurs recently who now look at the deal that you guys did as almost like a question of did they sell too early, which is odd because at the time of the deal, right, everyone's like, oh my God, $1 billion? Like, that's unfathomable. But now, you guys, like you said, you went from 25 million users to over 100 million users. And, who knows how much that accelerates further and where you can go if you get to 1 billion users. Do you think you sold too early?
I don't think so. I don't think that actually there's an answer of when the right time to sell is. I think that every company can either get sold or not sold at any given moment, depending on the market price. And for us, we weren't necessarily going out of our way to optimize for any one given variable, but I think instead trying to figure out a way that we could get to the vision of being the Instagram we wanted to be, the Instagram that captures Hurricane Sandy happening on the East Coast, the fact that everyone shares their Thanksgiving through it. We wanted to be that Instagram more quickly. And I think that at the time, Mark's vision and my vision, which is still the case, aligned. And it was
on that one romantic weekend, it sounded like. At least that's the way it was reported, that it was a quick discussion, relatively quick.
I think when you're friends with people and when you know them over many years, I actually don't think discussions take that long. It comes down to, and honestly, it wasn't just a weekend. It actually took much longer than that to discuss back and forth. But I think the right thing to remember here is that we were at a special moment in time where the combined vision of these two companies created something in our minds that we thought would be better for the world.
And that also, I mean, it had to have been a sort of just really interesting conflict in your head because you had just also raised a large round. And so you have to raise that round thinking that you're going to, just use that money to really go for it independently, right? And so then this deal comes together, and then all of a sudden that huge round, translates into a $1 billion deal. And how do you work through something like that in your head?
I think people think the idea of maybe for me selling your company. For me, it's a transaction. It's about who owns your stock. It's not about a moment in your life that, and now the chapter ends, now you're on to something else. For me, it's much more about like, what can we do now that we are part of Facebook? And what types of opportunities open up because we're part of this larger organization with more resources. But that time when we were deciding, it was very much a question of like, how do we do what we want to do for the rest of our lives and make sure that like Instagram will succeed in a way and never go away. And that's by making sure that it's tied to something that's going to be really valuable going forward. And I think that Facebook is creating an immense amount of value going forward.
And their stock is creeping back up in value as well, and that can't hurt.
I'm no stock analyst, but it's great to see that Facebook continues to do very well.
Talking a little bit about the broader things going on right now, there's a lot of talk about the so-called Series A crunch. And I think you're kind of in a unique position to talk about that as someone who had raised capital. Again, you raised right before the acquisition, and you had raised at a very large valuation. I don't know if reported, let's say it was $500 million, something like that.
This was our Series A you're talking about?
Yeah.
With Benchmark.
So how did, when you're at that high of a valuation and stuff, now everyone's talking about, well, it's going to be really hard for these companies that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars valuation, going into the billions of dollars valuation, to be able to raise again now. So like, how do you view the ecosystem right now? Do things seem that much different from when you were out there, raising those rounds as a consumer, mobile-focused application?
I think we got very, very lucky at Instagram because we had traction. When you go to raise money for a company and you go to Sand Hill Road and you visit, say, Benchmark in our case for our Series A, it's much, much easier to influence a Series A or at least get momentum behind it if you have a company that's showing traction. And at that time, we continued to grow very quickly. We had 25,000 users the first day of Instagram. That was a number that was unheard of for many companies. We passed 1 million users far earlier than any other company had, whether it's Twitter or Facebook alike. It was easy for us to have conversations. I think it was harder for us to figure out who we wanted to work with.
Yep. And
that was the hardest part for us. And that's why I say we got lucky, is because we had an amazing product at the time.
And you happen to be, this all came to fruition while it was a good time to be doing that, right? I mean, now the talk is that it's not going to be such a good time, even for people with amazing traction, because now there's a lot of focus on wanting to figure out what the business model will be. That's something you guys never really got to do on your own. How much of a focus is that now still within Facebook? Does Facebook want to make money off of you guys in some way?
I think they want to make value. And I think whether that value is driving engagement on Facebook or whether it's independent monetization in the future, I don't think the balance has been cast yet. I don't think that we figured it out. And
but you're thinking about it still.
Well, I mean, I think, wouldn't you? Like it's your organization and you're growing really quickly and you're trying to figure out how to create the most value for whether it's the parent company or for your team. And I think that what is exciting for us to work on right now is building value for users and also figuring out how to grow the company from where it is today to affecting, whether it's 1 billion people in the future. And the reason why is because every time we see things like Hurricane Sandy, when you open up Instagram and you can go to the Sandy hashtag and immediately see people documenting the world as it happens, you realize the power of this thing. And what you want to make sure is that you reach that point. And I think by creating value, whether it's within Facebook or independently, we're going to figure out how to create a long-lasting organization, just like I said before.
One thing I'm excited about for this, this slowing down of the ecosystem is I'm no longer going to get 1,000 Instagram for X pitches, which I must have gotten 10,000 of last year. That must have annoyed you a little bit. Is it annoying or flattering when everything last year was going to be the Instagram of X?
I think if you talk to VCs who have been around for a very long time, they have seen this pattern over and over and over again. There was a time where it was Foursquare for pets, and there's always a pattern, or Airbnb for whatever. And I think that, all of these are modern companies, but I've got to imagine that we as human beings we're pattern matching, and we look for patterns in the data. And what we try to do is we try to fit our view of a startup, I think, maybe into a mold of other startups that have been successful, and maybe by associating them, we're able to construct a mental picture of what we want to accomplish with them. It doesn't annoy me at all that people talk about Instagram as being a successful company, because I think it continues to be successful. And every entrepreneur in the world wants that for their organization. And Mike and I really want to make sure that Instagram continues to be successful going forward. And if it's the inspiration for generations of entrepreneurs to, decide to, when they graduate college, to go and start a startup, that creates more value for everyone in the long run.
Even if it's 25 different Instagram for video startups?
There were a lot of photo sharing services before Instagram came along. You remember
true.
some of them,
I
like
remember
Treehouse
yeah.
and Pick Please, and there were a bunch. And Instagram was not the first one to come along. And I'm actually really happy if someone does something with video. I think that's...
Are you guys not going to do something with video?
I've been really public about saying the timing for video, I think, is just very, very difficult. And I think we have all sorts of challenges going on right now at Instagram of scale and figuring out how to make sense of the massive amount of data that comes in every day. That video is one of these things I think will happen eventually, whether it's within Instagram, within Facebook, or some other company. Mobile video will happen. It's a matter of when. And it's just a timing thing. I think Instagram was special because we launched right when the iPhone 4 came out. And it meant all of a sudden everyone had a camera in their pocket that actually rivaled that of a point and shoot. And that was a really special moment in time, and I actually think that that contributed to Instagram's success. And therefore, I also think there will probably be a parallel moment in the future where data speeds get to a certain point, where reliability of whether it's LTE or 3G or wherever you are in the world, you can have service and you're not sitting there waiting for a video to download. I think it's just hard, and there will be a moment in which it tips.
And that's interesting. So you attribute Instagram's success, at least partially and maybe half as much to kind of the timing of when you were executing what you were executing.
Absolutely. Every company in the world, it's all about timing. It's all about shifts in technology and opportunities that get created. And the entrepreneur's job is to look out in the world and decide where the gaps are and where you're going to go fill those gaps. And shifts in technology, whether it's the printing press or cable modems, those shifts in technology have always led to a host of businesses that become very, very large.
So what else, if you weren't doing Instagram, what would you be doing? Are you going to be the guy who does...
It's a really hard question.
I know, it's too vague. Are you going to be the guy that does another startup down the road? Do you see yourself doing that? Or are you going to do something else? Are you going to invest, or, switch over to this side of things?
Are you recruiting me? Or?
Yes. Right now. Do you want a job?
You're the one that discovered Instagram. So I think that I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years. I have no idea. Would I like it to be part of Instagram? Absolutely. I love Instagram. Would I like to invest? Absolutely, because I love seeing generations of entrepreneurs create new ideas and value. And like you and I both love this as well. We love playing with new apps. We love playing with gadgets. That's something that helps us get up in the morning, is that we realize people are working really hard on these problems. Whether it's at a firm or not in the future, I don't know. Or whether it's like I'm working on the same type of things during the day on Instagram, I don't know. No, it's hard to ask. I mean, ask anyone in the room what they're going to be doing 10 years from now and then actually see what people do 10 years. It's actually really hard to predict. 10 years ago, if you asked me what I'd be doing, I have no idea that we'd be on stage right now. Although I'd actually, you know what's core to your values, and photography was always one of those core values. I loved taking photos, and I loved playing with photos my entire life. And it makes total sense that now that we're working on a photography company, that that line got created. And I think it's actually easy to see themes in people's lives. It's just not necessarily where you end up at any given moment.
And that's good. That's a good last thing to kind of talk about since we're running out of time. Obviously Instagram before that was a product called Bourbon. And how did you know? There's a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience who I think are probably dancing around ideas and think they're onto something, but they're not quite there. And you guys were like that, right? With Bourbon, you had something that was close to being there, and then you realized that it had to be what became Instagram. How do you get to that point? Was it a moment of revelation, or was it just iteration?
I actually think there are very few people in the world who can take a look at an idea and know whether it's going to be successful or not. That's why I think investing is actually really difficult, because you don't know where the team's going to end up. If you looked at what we were doing with Bourbon before it became Instagram, you'd have no idea that we would end up on Instagram. That being said, if you focus on, as an entrepreneur, on making sure that you learn whether or not it's the right idea very quickly, that's what ends up, I think, correlating with success, because it's the groups of people or the teams that have an idea, stick with it, and it just plods along and doesn't really go anywhere, and they don't change it. That's when the companies don't succeed. However, with us, what we would do is we'd put something out, we'd see if it stuck, it didn't, we'd work on something else. It was always related to the original idea, but we needed to iterate very quickly. And that's how we came to Instagram, was by iterating really quickly through multiple ideas until we ended on something that stuck. And it really stuck. And that first day when we decided to launch it to the public and we got 25,000 users, that was a big day for us, because we knew we had something that had potential. But it was up to the next 2 years of our history that meant that we could take something with potential and actually create value out of it. And that's where we are today.
All right. Well, fortunately, we're out of time, but thanks a lot, Kevin.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Looks like there are a few Instagram and Kevin Systrom fans here. I'm really glad you came back.
Absolutely.
And you too, MG. Thank you so much. You're coming back next year?
I hope so.
You had fun in Paris?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
You like it?
Yes,
Great.
absolutely. The food's great. People are great. It's a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, MG.